Hi, my name's SteveMann, Man Lab. It's an honor to be here for WAIC, World Artificial Intelligence Conference, and special thanks to YuYuan for inviting me to WAIC Keynote. And I want to talk a little bit about my favorite topic, which is extended intelligence, XI and XR, extended reality, physical metaverse. This sort of started out as a childhood fascination for me. Since I was growing up, I was always fascinated with these sorts of things, and this is some of the things I had. Like, my dad got me that oscilloscope when I was 12 years old, and it wasn't working. Only the dot would only go up and down. The time base wasn't working on it, so I was impatient and wanted to see it, and I moved it back and forth. And I kind of invented the world's first spatial computer in the 1970s. 1974, I built this sort of one-dimensional thing that you move through space, and it's a spatial computer. It's called the sequential wave imprinting machine, and it's an array of light sources that is moved through space, and artificial intelligence in the physical world, what we now would call physical metaverse. And this is a little replica of it. It's called the sequential wave imprinting machine, and what it does is, if I turn that on, there's a row of lights on here that shows an extended reality. Here I have electromagnetic wave source. This is a smartphone here, and when I move this back and forth, you can see the waveform there. If I move it slowly, the dot bobs up and down slowly, and if I move it a little bit faster, the dot goes up and down faster, and if I move it fast enough, of course, you can see the waveform here. And when it's closer, the waves are stronger when we're closer and weaker when we're further away, weaker over here and stronger over here close to the source. And so if I go through some material, like let's say, I'll notice, of course, the waveform's weaker going through this block of wood, and if I go through a block of concrete, it's even weaker. And of course, if I go through the wood and the concrete together, it's even weaker still, but still discernible. I mean, you can still see the waveform here. Now, if I block it with my hand, do you think that my hand will block more or less than what the concrete did? Think about that for a moment. Now see, my hand here almost completely blocks it. And because there's water content in the hand, that's all about water. Radio waves don't penetrate through water very well, electromagnetic radio waves, because of the conductivity. So even if I put one finger over it, it significantly reduces the signal strength. 2 fingers, quite a bit. 3 fingers, 4 fingers, almost completely stops it. And so, versus seeing the full waveform. So what I have here is perhaps the world's first spatial computer. It's something we call extended reality, XR, which allows you to see and understand the world beyond what we can normally see. It allows us to see in the infrared, ultraviolet, see radio waves, see sound waves. This is an example of extended reality, XR. Extended reality, we could think of it as a physical metaverse, kind of like bringing the physical world into the metaverse. I've got my computer here, and I'll just go through some slides on my talk here. Let me turn out the lights here as well. So XR, extended reality, or XI, what we often call the sustainable technology society, is really these 3 things: the sustainable technology society, sustainability, technology, and society, or the physical world of atoms, what we mean by sustainability, the environment around us, our surroundings, the technological world of bits, and the social worlds, let's say genes, just for consistency, alpha, beta, gamma, atoms, bits, genes, let's say. And that's the physical world. Blue represents planet Earth. Planet Earth is blue. Here's the NASA's first shot of Earth from space. The blue planet Earth is blue. And the green, of course, represents technology. The green is these screens here. And so the green screen or what we're familiar with, traditionally computer screens. And the red represents humanity, the red circle, because red is the color of, flesh. It doesn't matter what race or origin we are, if we put a light bulb behind our hand, the light that comes through is red because of the hemoglobin in our blood that sort of unites us. So we have these red, green, and blue circles, and that represents now we're talking about the intersection between the environment, which is our surroundings, the environment, which is us ourselves, and the environment, which is the boundary between us and our surroundings. And so this is kind of mersivity XV or XR or XI, what we mean by this. Now, advancing technology for humanity, as I said, we've got the world of humanity and the world of technology, and we want to bring these together. And of course, MIT, we often talk about atoms and bits, which is the physical and virtual, which in this case here. But what we really want to do is talk about all of that. So reality, physical reality can be thought of as a reality axis, and virtual reality is a virtuality axis with the origin being 0. And we can look at these VR and PR. And of course, augmented reality might be some combination on these two axes, and we can have augmented or extended reality, AR. And then, of course, we've got diminished reality near the origin, where we have technologies that reduce our reality, technologies like welding glasses that cut down on reality. And then a sensory deprivation float tank is the perfect example at the origin here. This is the world's first VR float tank that we made back in the early 1990s. We played around a lot with these concepts of realities, all these different realities. And XR is an interpolant or extrapolant. And XR, let X be the space of all realities. And this XR continuum really touches in on that. XR, let XR be the space of all of these realities in the alpha beta plane or axis. Extended reality reaches beyond and interpolates between them. And here we have some examples, like ice water swimming is a physical reality example. The float tank is at the origin. And then, of course, we've got the VR float tank, where I'm inside that float tank with my VR headset on, and all I have is virtual content, and the physical world is shut out. And then, of course, I can go for an ice water swim with the underwater virtual reality glass as well. And so these are examples of extended reality, and we can come out into the sociality space. In fact, XR sort of does that to begin with, but if we really want to make that explicit, we can call it XV, Extendiverse, just to play into this metaverse idea a little bit more. So we've got the metaverse, HCI, the human and cyber, and then we've got the sustainable metaverse. This is something YuYuan and I have been talking quite a bit about, sustainable metaverse, sustainable HCI. And so we've been kind of looking at these Congress, getting together people. This is the Davos Congress as well. And so we've been following along this. This sort of builds on 50 years of inventing, creating, and living on digital XR, extended reality, since my childhood. Inventing, designing, building, and wearing these technologies. This is the world's first photograph of an electromagnetic radio wave. This is really the world's first spatial computer, that one that I showed earlier over there. And these are examples from it. This is an example of a surveillance camera showing metavalence or metavision, sensing of sensing and sensing their capacity to sense. This is something I called Meta back in the 1970s, and we actually founded a company called Meta as well a little bit more recently. But these are examples of metavision and meta-sensing, sensing of sensors and sensing their capacity to sense. With self-driving cars, we can sense the sensing capacity. AI, machine intelligence, modal metaverse. This is a smart e-bike that's also equipped with similar sensors. And here's an example of a photograph of two microphones and showing their capacity to listen and the interference pattern between these capacities. This is a metavalograph. It's not a photograph of a physical quantity, but it's a photograph of the potential for some such quantity to exist. It's a photograph of what could be there, the potential for something to be there. And so XR has a very precise definition that Charles Wyckoff and I coined the term extended reality back in 1991 and extended intelligence. And you can check that out here to take a look back. And collaborative, I mean, XR inherently is collaborative because everybody can see it. You don't need special eyeglasses. Now, we do have the eyeglasses, but it's not necessary. Making that more explicit, really, YuYuan and I sort of fleshed this out in a very explicit way, XV. And so this is kind of the idea of XV. Now, the environment is our surroundings, as I said before, versus the environment, which is us ourselves. The environment versus the environment, technology that becomes part of us. And so this is a really good example. The spacesuit is a really nice example because you've got the environment inside and you've got the environment outside. And really, if you think of vessels, we talk about cyborgs as Manfred Klein's bicycle was his favorite example, but really cyborgs have existed more than 1 million years. We've had vessels. Humans have had vessels before the invention of clothing, before the invention of the wheel, even before Homo sapiens. We had vessels. And the vessel defines an environment and an environment. My favorite example of the vessel is this ball. You go inside that ball and run on the water, and it's really fun being inside a ball and running on the water. And it's really an interesting vessel because it's a unit sphere in meters. It has a 1 meter radius, 2 meter diameter, so it's really the unit sphere. And you've got environmentalism as human-centered. You've got the environment, which is what's inside the ball, and the environment, which is what's outside the ball, and the environment is the ball itself. Environment, and environment is the technology itself. So this is a good example here of a vessel. The environment is our surroundings, the blue yonder. The environment is us ourselves, the red flesh. And then the environment is the boundary or border between the environment and the environment. And so we really need to look at environmentalism, immersivity environmentalism, as this framework for where AI should go. We can think of it in terms of feedback loops. We can think of immersivity as humanistic intelligence, feedback loop. HI is humanistic intelligence. We can look at it that way. And it has a fractal self-similar nature, of course, because the mind is full of feedback loops. And the mind and body have efferent and afferent nerves that connect them in the feedback loop. And, of course, if we put this mind and body together with technology, that forms a feedback loop, sensors and senses. This is the human-machine or the cyborg. And then that itself, the human mind-body connection, is the human-machine cyborg. And then we have a community of cyborgs, which is, in a smart city, let's say. And so this whole construct is really very, very self-similar, very fractal in nature. You're going to have a whole bunch of smart cities all over the world, for example, that are connected this way. And so this is an example of a technology that brings us closer to nature. I really want to talk about the biggest problem that we face here in the city of Toronto, where I live, is access to fresh, clean water, the basic human right to access fresh, clean water. This is actually at MIT, where I did my studies, and we swim in the Charles River at MIT. But the same thing is true here in Toronto, where we are looking for access to fresh, clean water. And here's the Canadian winter. I swim in the wintertime. I swim year-round for health and well-being. And in this case, I swim over to a piece of ice and I bring a paddle with me, and then I stand up on the ice and paddle, and I've got my head-up display there. And this is extended reality. This is XR. This allows me to interact and to see my own physiological quantities within my body as well as the environment. So this glass gives me a picture of the environment and the environment together and allows me to connect with nature and to become one with nature and the natural world and the physical world. Another good example is the Interaxon Muse. I co-founded a company called Interaxon, and we make a product called the Muse Brain Sensing Headband. The wearable sleep band is a wearable sleep lab, and we've done all kinds of experiments with it. Another of my favorites is the hydraulophone, the underwater pipe organ, the underwater musical instrument, which connects us to nature. Water is very important in our culture and our recognition of Toronto as the world's epicenter of freshwater stewardship, because Ontario is home of the Great Lakes, which hold 85% of North America's freshwater, or 20% of the world's freshwater, and Toronto is the capital of Ontario. So we really recognize the importance of water HCI, water human computer interaction. Cyborgs have existed for more than 1 million years in the form of vessels, and that is really the connection to water is the first example of this. And so we have this kind of framework of teaching our connections to water, and this is our swim group, Ice Water Swim, and our connections to the natural world, and how AI really needs to follow these connections to the natural world. It's really important that when we think of AI, we think of how can we connect to the natural world, how can we connect to nature. Now I want to end off with just an example of this hydrolophone technology to connect us close to nature. I had this idea as an art installation. You know, imagine if you had denatured Guinness. Guinness that was made unfit for human consumption, deliberately made undrinkable, so that you could come and look at the Guinness but not actually drink it. So I'm envisioning a bar or a pub. I would design a pub just like they've designed the waterfront. I would design this pub where you can come and look at the beer everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Imagine if you had vodka, absolute vodka, and imagine denatured absolute vodka with purple dye in it so that it was undrinkable, so that you wouldn't be able to drink it, but you could look at it. And so what I would do in this pub is mount the beer and the vodka and the whiskey and so on up at eye level, so you can really see it, not down on the table, but mount it higher, right at eye level, so you can look at it and get a really close look at it, but of course not drink it. And then I was also going to have free ice cream, a big sign that says free ice cream, and then at the bottom, for display purposes only, not for tasting or eating, and then have denatured ice cream. You know, and so this idea would be to raise awareness of this denaturement of our waterfront, which is happening all around us, where these big boulders are being put in. A lot of people are driving out to Humber Bay because they've blocked off our beach here, so a lot of the Swim OP members were driving out to Humber Bay, but now they're putting giant boulders along the beach there. There's a natural pebble beach where people were swimming, but they put these giant boulders there, and they say it's to improve the water access, so you can come up really close. So if you don't have to walk across the beach to look at the water, you can come right up and look down at the water. It makes it harder to touch or get into or out of the water, but it makes it easier to come and look at it. So that's what denaturement is. So I would say the purpose of the pub, the denaturement pub art installation, the purpose of this installation, the alleged purpose, is to give more people access to beer, wine, spirits, ice cream, things of that nature. But of course, just to look at. So you can come up really, really close and look at this drink here, but not a drop to actually drink. So that's what we mean by the denaturement exhibit, or the denaturement installation. So that was kind of our website, denaturement.com, to raise awareness of this problem that we have where our waterfronts are being designed by people who don't swim or paddle in the inner harbor. They say you're not allowed to swim in the inner harbor. And so you're not allowed to swim. So I kind of thought, you know, of this idea like, are you swimming in the lake where they say it's not allowed 'cause on land they want to take? Strange deals are happening, no stranger would it be if we swam in downtown Toronto for free.